Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out on this rainy Wednesday evening to hear about a very important topic. My name is Daisy Pistey-Lyhne. I'm the Executive Director of Sonoma County Conservation Action. Woo! As some of you seem to know, well, Conservation Action has been getting out into Sonoma County, all over the county, knocking on 40,000 doors a year for the last 28 years. So we have been going about as long as fossil fuel companies have known that climate change was a problem and have been obfuscating about it this whole time. Just think about that. Tonight we have a really great program, and we're going to kick it off with some amazing students from the Sunrise Movement. You guys have probably heard about them, right? Yeah. These are the kids who are protesting in front of Nancy Pelosi's office in Washington, D.C. in the halls of Congress. And it's a national movement that's been growing and pushing our politicians to finally start taking action on climate change. So give it up for Celeste, Lucia, and Mimi.
Hi everyone, I'm Lucia, this is Celeste, and Sierra. We're part of Sunrise. We started the Sunrise Hub here in Sonoma County. And for those of you who don't know, the Sunrise Movement is an army of young students all across the country who are fighting for a better future for everyone around the world, because we believe that everyone has the right to a livable future, good paying jobs, and health care. And we think that and our core belief around that is that all of these problems, they can't be separated from the environment. Our environment affects everything about who we are, how we live, and to save our way of life, we have to save the planet first. So we have a few personal stories to tell you about how we got involved with the environmental movement. So when I was in the 5th grade, I went with my class on a field trip to Bouverie Wildflower Preserve in Kenwood. We learned about the birds, the animals, the plants, and the insects who made their home in the preserve, as well as the people who protected them. That day, when we left to return to civilization, part of me stayed there with the peregrine falcons and the red-bellied newts and the sky loon. For the next 6 years, I kept coming back to the preserve. I became a junior docent there and learned to care for the 500-acre gem of California wilderness. I learned about the birds, the insects, the trees, and the grasses. I learned about the oak woodlands and the chaparral and the mixed evergreens and the riparian corridor. I learned about the delicate web of connectivity that existed between everything in the preserve and beyond it. The more I learned, the more I loved. Bouverie came to epitomize California and all of its natural beauty to me. It's safe to say that I grew up there. And there I developed a love of nature that guides me even today. Bouverie was a place I always felt safe and comfortable, and I was always filled with wonder and joy when I uncovered another secret about the creatures that lived there. That's why it was so hard for me when the preserve burned. When the fires of October 2017 ravaged our county, Bouverie was right in the middle of it all. The preserve lost everything: the grasslands, the oak trees, the historic buildings, the fragile ecosystems. I remember going back for the first time and seeing empty plots of ash where there had once been trees and life. It felt like everything was gone. Years of scientific work, eons of plants growing and shaping the land, 6 years of my life up in smoke. I had known since I was a kindergartner that I wanted to help the environment, but it wasn't until I saw the place I had considered to be my second home reduced to ash and rubble that I realized how dire our situation is. Losing the preserve pushed me to join the Sunrise Movement and start a hub in Sonoma County. And Sunrise and the Green New Deal were created by people who understand the urgency of now. This town hall was created by people who understand what we have to lose. We've been burned by the horrors of climate change, but the people you see around you and organizations like the Sonoma County Conservation Act, Daily Actions, and Sunrise itself, and others who created this event, are evidence that we can heal, come back stronger, and keep our future from suffering in the same pain as we did, but only if we act now.
Hello everyone, my name is Celeste Chavez Hernandez and I'm a senior from Casa Grande High School. I would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and joining us in rallying together for such a vital cause. Our strength truly builds with more numbers, and thank you for your support. For as long as I can remember, I have been surrounded and aware of the effects of inadequate environmental justice. But it wasn't until recently when I truly understood the resonating impact of such actions. Since I was young, I have heard countless stories of my family's struggles as immigrants trying to find their way in this country. As immigrants, my family settled into a lifestyle of field work in their early days, since it was the only work they could find. Settled in Salinas Valley, the salad bowl of the world, my grandparents, parents, and siblings all got to experience the gruesome effects of the absence of equitable environmental action. Many farm workers, like my own family, struggled through inadequate resources on the field. From an absence of proper bathrooms, inadequate breaks for hydration, to the increasingly harmful use of consistent pesticides around farm workers, many suffered menial working conditions. All these actions, which were practiced during the late 1960s and onward, still enraged me decades later. The targeting of marginalized groups still enraged me. The silencing of voices still enraged me. Being exposed to such a history made me conscious of the vast amount of human rights and labor rights issues and how they encompass and come together with environmental issues. Fast forward to 2016, where I sat next to my mother at a labor rights conference, listening in awe to the words of American labor leader and civil rights activist Dolores Huerta. I sat in amazement, taking in all her stories of activism and involvement within the farm workers movement. As a young woman of color, seeing a similar reflection before me made me realize I could take my anger and frustration and turn it into action just as she did. As a person of color, I understand the struggles of language barriers, assimilating to different cultures and feeling powerless. I understand how parents feel helpless, defeated, and lost. I understand how vulnerable marginalized groups are. I understand that for some, community news pertaining to them reaches them last, and none of this is fair, right, or just. Environmental racism is what brought my attention to environmental justice, but activism and demonstrations are what keeps me motivated. No matter the time in history, environmental justice will somehow be interwoven within our political, social, or economic issues. The mistreatment of farm workers, the Flint, Michigan water crisis, the Safeway gas station nearly 200 feet away from McDowell Elementary School in Petaluma, all these issues still persist today. I became involved in environmental justice to help give power to those who feel hopeless and a voice to those who feel silenced, for all beings on this planet. Now, at such a pivotal moment in Earth's history, we must come together to bridge these disparities and apply equitable action to all of our communities. And let us not forget about our Earth who birthed us. Thank you.
So one of the main things that Sunrise tries to embody is being loud so that people listen to you, because there are a lot of people who don't want to listen to us, but also being nonviolent and trying to welcome as many people as possible. So to that end, Sunrise does a lot of singing. So we have our music director here, Sierra, to lead us all in a song. It's call and response, so as soon as you start picking it up, join in. Thank you.
Right. Disclaimer, I am not a professional. And I'm going to do something very vulnerable. I'm going to sing to you guys. So I'm going to expect that you sing with me. Be vulnerable with me. All right. Good thing. I haven't even done anything yet. Don't clap yet. So luckily, the lyrics are pretty easy to remember. And I'm going to say them first. So you just do call and response sort of thing, right? So, we're going to start kind of like... what did I say? I wrote the lyrics with me? Oh, wait. Okay, so it's going to go, let the life I lead, speak for me, speak for me. We're going to kind of go like that, right? And then when we get to the more chorus version, just sing along with me once you pick it up, right? I'm going to keep this in my hand, actually, just in case. All right, so. Let the life I lead, speak for me, speak for me. Let the life I lead, life I lead, speak for me. Let the work I do, speak for me. Let the work I do, speak for me. And when I get to the end of the road and I lay down my heavy load, let the work I do, speak for me. Let the songs I sing, speak for me. Let the songs I sing, speak for me. And when I get to the end of the road and I lay down my heavy load, let the songs I sing, speak for me. Let the path I take, speak for me. Let the path I take, speak for me. And when I get to the end of the road and I lay down my heavy load, let the path I take, speak for me.
So beautiful, thank you. And now, to take us a little bit more into the visuals after we had the audio, we're gonna have a great presentation from 4 wonderful young ladies from Youth versus Apocalypse. So please give a warm, warm welcome to Eleanor, Lucia, Lucy, and Annabelle. Woo!
And Eula. This is by Mom Muse, and it's called We Shall Be Known. If any of you know it, we invite you to join in. And we're going to sing it twice, so if you catch on and want to sing with us the second time, please do.
This is dedicated to all beings, especially the one we live on, Mother Earth. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires.
which people give back to the earth who gives us so much.
I want to be able to have children without feeling guilty or afraid.
I want to live in a world where every being can be appreciated.
I want to live in a world where immigrant families don't have to live their lives constantly working and fighting for better rights.
I want to live in a world where I can make decisions about my future without being afraid I won't have one. So, we're youth organizers. About 6 months ago, Eula, Annabelle, and I joined 350 Bay Area's Youth versus the Apocalypse Fellowship. It's a group of about 30 teens from around the Bay Area who meet every month to learn about how to take a leadership role in this climate justice movement. And one of the main focuses of our group is the Green New Deal. So, if you don't know, the Green New Deal is a resolution that was introduced by Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey, who also deserves recognition. It outlines a complete economic shift into a sustainable economy. And it's the first resolution to match the size of the climate crisis. And so it's not a bill, it's a resolution, it's like goals that are being set, and once that's passed, people will be able to pass smaller bills that are directly affecting areas of our lives.
So in February, Youth vs. Apocalypse teamed up with Sunrise Bay Area and Earth Guardians, and we hosted a rally in San Francisco outside of Senator Feinstein's office, urging her to sign on to the Green New Deal. As many of you might know, she did not want to sign on to the resolution. She said it never stood a chance to pass the Senate, and so we went to her as her constituents, asking her to use her power as a senator and as our representative to take action. And right now, all over the world, people, and especially youth, are rising up and using their voice and their power as constituents and holding their elected officials accountable and pressuring them to take climate action and make solutions. We need to tell our politicians to act on climate change, or they will not get our vote.
Hi, my name is Ayala and I go to Rosa University Prep. Rosa University Prep is a small school in Santa Rosa who has been trying to promote climate change awareness. The first thing we did was get bins in every classroom, composable bins in every classroom, add labels to separate our recycling, trash, and compost. We even have composable utensils. It is something small, but it is a big difference. It's something small, but with a big difference always comes small steps. The students in AP Spanish really wanted to make a bigger difference, and they started with recycling projects, Green Security, which is students supervising the way other students recycle. We have been trying to promote biking, walking to school to reduce car pollution. Climate change is real, and it is something many people choose not to acknowledge. And we the youth are here to change that. El cambio climático sí es real.
Hey, my name is Alondra Oseguera. I'm a student at Rosa University Prep. For our class project that began at the beginning of the school year, we had to work in our community to fight global warming. My group and I chose legislation, and ever since we have been trying to pass a polystyrene foam ban here in Santa Rosa. This ban was previously passed in the city of Sebastopol, and we hope to pass a ban throughout Sonoma County. For our group, we created a poster that informs people the damages of polystyrene and how they can help to ban this material from Santa Rosa. We have helped out communities through trying to get rid of polystyrene, and I'm hoping that the City Council passes this ban so we can get rid of this useless garbage that just ends up in the ocean once and for all. Thank you.
On March 15th, students across the world walked out of and striked from school to urge elected officials everywhere to take a leading stance against climate change, inspired by Greta Thunberg, a 16-year-old Swedish activist.
We were demanding that immediate solutions be enacted that are aligned with what science demands: net zero carbon emissions in 11 years, and even reversing the effects of climate change by sequestering carbon.
In Sebastopol, we gathered over 200 students from about 6 different schools from Sonoma County at a rally for climate justice. Students there engaged in a number of actions, like registering to vote, writing letters to and calling Senator Dianne Feinstein to urge her to support a Green New Deal, signing a petition to get the California Teachers Retirement Fund divested from fossil fuels, message of urgency across to a reporter from the Press Democrat, and having them learn about different upcoming events about climate justice in our community.
At the North Bay the North Bay Youth Climate Strike, which I organized, we gathered here in Santa Rosa, with many students and people of all ages demanding climate action. We marched to the City Hall and back with our signs. We wrote postcards to Dianne Feinstein. We saw some speeches and songs, and we put together a mosaic, which each attendee of the strike painted, and we put them together to create a beautiful mural. We also had many organizations tabling where attendees could get more information on how to continue to be active in the climate movement. Overall, both of these strikes were unifying and educational events, and to be part of the 1.6 million students striking that day felt so exhilarating, like we are really making a difference.
Okay, before I start my presentation, we were focusing on Senator Feinstein because she was our representative who had not signed on to the Green New Deal. Just to make that clear, a lot of our representatives have. So, the fight against climate change is a fight over power. Not only the power that runs our cars and our houses, but the power that the fossil fuel industry holds over society. Fossil fuel companies are the wealthiest and most powerful corporations on our planet. For decades, they have corrupted our governments, ravaged our planets, and treated our atmosphere as an open sewer, over-contributing to the chemical imbalance of climate change. The impacts of climate change are enormous, and we're seeing the worst impacts on the people who have contributed the least to this problem. We need to take this power back. The fossil fuel corporations are holding us back. It's going to take a massive government action to transform our energy, our food, and our transportation systems. But we can do it. Actually, one more. We need our cities, states, and federal government officials to team up and work to pass many bills on every level of government to address this crisis and to move our communities forward. But we are not on track to do that yet. This is the problem. The fossil fuel CEOs and corrupt politicians are blocking climate action. They've mounted on a decade-long strategy to protect their profits and block progress on climate every step of the way. Why are they doing this? Well, since 1988, 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions can be tracked to over just 100 fossil fuel producers. And over half of our global emissions can be tracked to 25 producers, including Exxon, Shell, and Chevron. The point is, if climate action at every level of government is possible, these guys would not be multi-billionaires anymore. We need to hear from all different voices, everyone's voice, because your voice is powerful and you have the right as a citizen on this earth. So use your voice, your vote, and your power to initiate change. In this movement, we want to bring forward the voices, as I said, or the people who are on the front line of these crises, the vulnerable communities, those who have been silenced for too long. And as I mentioned before, these are the people who have been brutally, or have experienced the brutality of climate change. So these fossil fuel corporations are oppressing our voices. And they have decided something else as well. They have made this something common sense, which is climate denialism. It's not actually common sense. Their strategy has 3 phases: deceive the people, buy out politicians, and consolidate power in government. This is how fossil fuel billionaires are redefining our common sense to make climate inaction and denialism the status quo.
But with the Green New Deal, we can reshape the economy in 3 major ways. We can create good jobs for all, a democratic economy for all, and a good life for all. So a key part of the Green New Deal is good jobs for all. You'll have secure, fair, and meaningful work. We know that climate action can create millions of jobs because we have to retrofit and climate-proof every building in the United States, upgrade and fortify all of our infrastructure. We have to grow healthy, sustainable food in every community, and we have to plant billions of trees that will take up carbon from the atmosphere and store it in the ground where it belongs. So there's a bunch of physical stuff to build, but to fight climate change, we also have to get a lot better at taking care of each other. And here's the thing. People who do so much of the important work today are women of color or immigrants and are exploited and underpaid in today's economy. So green jobs have to be good jobs, and we can't trust the market to provide them. Do we want everyone to be paid a living wage that can support a family, to have a safe, non-discriminatory workplace, and the right to join a union, healthcare, paid vacation, and family and medical leave? Then we have to make it happen. And that's why these are such a core component of the Green New Deal policy called the Jobs Guarantee. There's so much climate work to be done that the federal government can offer a job to every single American who needs one and participates in this transition. Most work will still be in the private sector, but the federal job guarantee does set a floor for wages and benefits. Every employee will have those minimum standards, or their workers will simply leave them for the public option. So this policy would be life-changing for all of us, and it would especially lift those of us with the worst deal in our economy, the low-income workers, indigenous communities, people of color, migrants, the unhoused, and the formerly incarcerated people. It will lift them up the most. These communities have been through centuries of oppression, exclusion, environmental injustice. They're the Americans who have done the least to cause global warming, and yet they're the first ones hit, and often hit the worst by the climate chaos. With the job guarantee, we can use the power of the government to make sure that everyone can participate in this transition fully, and that green jobs really are good jobs.
So we've talked a lot about how the government needs to lead. But does that mean the Green New Deal is all about change from top down? No. This transition will be a public undertaking in every sense of the word, big and small. It certainly doesn't mean that elected officials and bureaucrats will do everything for us. We're going to put the economy under democratic control. That's the second way the Green New Deal will reshape this country. Like the school children rising up to strike for our futures, we will keep the government in check and balance federal action with community-driven initiatives. How many of you have heard the term energy democracy? Me neither. It's when communities own and control their own electricity. That could mean a local cooperative that buys or even produces its own power, or it could mean a fully public system at the municipal level, like Sonoma Clean Power, for example. Wind and solar are especially well suited to the cooperative model because they're smaller scale, decentralized technologies. They can literally put power in the hands of the people. And the federal government can provide infrastructure and support to make it easy. The public, and especially marginalized communities, need a meaningful say in how the Green New Deal gets designed and implemented, and the ability to intervene when it goes astray. So the federal job guarantee, for example, will be funded from the top, but administered from the bottom. Local municipalities decide what gets done based on the needs and skills of the community. I want to emphasize the importance of minority communities in the Green New Deal, and the climate justice movement as a whole. Indigenous communities, people of color, women. I would like to point out that we are all female identified people up here. These groups have experienced centuries of intergenerational trauma, and they must be treated with justice before we can move fully forward as a society. Unlike FDR's original New Deal, the Green New Deal ensures the importance of partnership with all minority communities to develop meaningful and non-discriminatory strategies. If you take a look at Section 3 in the handout, did we get handouts? Yeah. Okay. Yes, if you take a look at Section 3, the resolution emphasizes the importance of community-defined projects and strategies, and says that a Green New Deal must be developed through transparent and inclusive consultation, collaboration, and partnership with frontline and vulnerable communities, labor unions, worker cooperatives, civil society groups, academia, and businesses.
The vision of a Green New Deal is about values. It's about the life we believe each and every one of us deserves to lead. Our third and final theme is a good life for all. As we've seen, the fossil fuel economy squeezes everything it can from working people and the planet, all to maximize profits and power and keep them concentrated in the hands of the 1%. The Green New Deal built a society based on radically different views, like cooperation, not competition. Rather than fueling endless consumption, the Green New Deal prizes community and solidarity. Instead of pitting us against each other for the benefit of the few, it lifts up the many, prioritizing all of our needs and dreams. Building these visions of equality means dismantling systems of oppression. Domination of communities of color, women, and indigenous people, those that will be the most impacted by the climate crisis, is rooted in the same kind of domination over the earth. The Green New Deal is the first comprehensive political action plan to not only offer environmental justice solutions by urgently drawing down carbon emissions to avoid the worst effects of the crisis, but to create community resilience through social justice. It is in this framework in which a good life for all is possible. things like ample leisure time and universal access to healthy food and nature, the Green New Deal champions a better life for all, one that is rooted to people's connection to the environment, the same one we're fighting to protect. Imagine a United States where renowned architects clamor to design new public housing complete with green spaces and daycare centers. Getting health or childcare or finding a new job is an easy, painless process. So is opening up a bank account at your local post office, where you might also go for a small loan or technical support to get solar panels on your roof. If you're a musician or a painter, you're eligible for any number of government grants. For every American, getting to the water or the woods is a fast, free train ride away, and there's plenty of time to do it. We can make this vision a reality in all three areas we've explored, guaranteeing good jobs, economic democracy, and a good life for all, and a better life for all. We can take courage from the very real historical precedents of the 30s and 40s. We've done so much of this before, and not very long ago.
The Green New Deal will be even better. This time, we can decide to leave no one behind. We can refuse to let them divide us, and we can work together to repair the damage done. But it all depends on our movements. The 1930s saw a wave of mass labor organizations and strikes across this country. People power was the major force behind the victories of the New Deal. Today, the stakes are even higher. We're up against the world's richest corporations and most entrenched political interests.
That's where you come in. We all have something to lose to climate change and something to gain in coming together for a Green New Deal. We need to ask everyone, yes, everyone, to join us in the push for a Green New Deal. This policy is immensely popular across America, and it's our mission to show that. We're collecting endorsements of the Green New Deal from organizations across the country.
I want everyone to think of a group you're associated with, be it church, or like a nonprofit organization, a school club, your neighbors, anything. And ask that group to endorse the Green New Deal. And then go to your neighbors, if you haven't already, and ask them to endorse it. And then go to the neighbor after that, and your whole block, and have a block party, and have them all endorse it.
If we, as a community of Sonoma County, mobilize with our elected officials in solidarity with other communities around the state, like Los Angeles, and around the country, making bold strides towards a Green New Deal, we can make climate justice the #1 issue for the 2020 presidential election. So let's do it.
You work in a school, know somebody that is working at a school, I want you to raise your hands. That's a lot of us, right? My name is Kate Roney. I'm a high school junior, and I am a youth leader for Schools for Climate Action, a nonpartisan, grassroots youth adult-led campaign, and we focus on empowering schools to end climate silence in the educational sector. We do this by asking them to pass climate resolutions that use strong language to declare climate change a generational justice issue. If any of those ideas speak to you, we have a table back there, and we would love to talk to you about getting a resolution started somewhere where you know people or where you attend. Thank you. inspired. It's just so incredible to see the next generation stepping forward to take on this issue, isn't it? Thank you, ladies. But the fact is that they can't do it alone. And that's why we brought you here tonight, because we need all of you. We need all generations to step up in this battle. We here in Sonoma County are quite lucky because as the Green New Deal is trying to gain support from congresspeople across the country, we have both of our elected representatives, both Representative Jared Huffman and Representative Mike Thompson, early endorsers of the Green New Deal. And they both wanted to be here tonight. They were so excited to hear about this gathering happening. But unfortunately, they're both in Washington for votes. So we have some quick, brief video messages from them. Here is Jared Huffman.
Hi, everyone. Congressman Jared Huffman here. I want to thank you for allowing me to be a virtual participant in your program by way of this video. I am impressed, as always, by the richly talented and engaged environmental community here in the North Bay. And the list of participating groups in this program just really drives home how lucky I feel to be your representative in Congress. I'm grateful to everyone in this room today for making a difference and for supporting the Green New Deal and calling for climate action. It is terrific to see students and young people driving this conversation, taking political power back from the industries that currently control our energy and our natural resources. I join you in supporting the Green New Deal. I'm also working in Congress on aggressive climate actions. My bill to stop Arctic wildlife refuge drilling just passed the Natural Resources Committee. And I'm working on another bill to prevent any new drilling off our California coastline. That bill is queued up for votes next week. I also am working at the Climate Crisis Select Committee. And with other members on that Select Committee, we're working to design a comprehensive action plan, one that starts with rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement and builds a clean energy future for a livable planet. There is a renewed energy surrounding climate change right now, and it's fueled by new members of Congress like AOC and her charge for the Green New Deal. Some veteran members of Congress may be a little uncomfortable with this new energy from the freshman class, but I am not one of them. I welcome it. Quite frankly, we need this new energy. We need everything we can get if we're going to address the most pressing problem of our time. And we have about 10 to 12 years to do it. That is arresting and reversing impacts of climate change. We don't have a lot of time and we need to get to work. So I'm energized by the opportunities in this new Congress. In the House, we've already seen real movement. We just passed H.R. 9, the Climate Action Now Act, to require the Trump administration to remain in the Paris Climate Agreement and to develop a serious plan for how the U.S. will meet its climate commitments to reduce carbon pollution. We got bipartisan support for that bill, by the way. We're going to insist that an infrastructure plan is designed to deal with climate change too. And I'm excited to work together on translating this renewed enthusiasm into real results and hope that you will think of me and my staff as allies and resources for you as we work together to address the greatest moral, economic, and environmental imperative of our time.
Hi, I'm Mike Thompson, and I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight, but work has me in Washington, D.C. for legislative votes. I'm proud to see our community turn out to discuss this very important issue. Climate change is the gravest threat we face today. I've long said that if we don't act decisively now, nothing else matters because we won't have a planet to pass on to our next generation. And we must be bold. We can't cede to aspiration to apathy. We have to use every tool at our disposal to get this done and get it done fast. Here in Sonoma County, we've seen the devastating impact of climate change. Our fire season is longer, our fires are more destructive, our roads more frequently flooded. Climate change plays a role in all of this. And it's going to take all of us working together, me and Jarrett in Washington, and all of you at home. We have a new House majority and we're taking action. I was an original co-author of H.R. 9, the Climate Action Now Act. This bill blocks the president from using any federal money to withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. It also requires him to draw up a plan to reduce emissions. I was proud to vote to pass that bill in the House earlier this month. I'm also working as my role as chairman of the House Ways and Means Subcommittee on Select Revenue Measures to ensure we green our tax code by incentivizing renewable energy. In fact, just today, the full Committee on Ways and Means held a hearing on climate change to determine new ways we can use our role to address this issue head-on. I signed on as an original co-author of the Green New Deal. This resolution is a bold and aspirational statement about the urgency of this issue. And I think our district is emblematic of the Green New Deal's goals. People here at home are already taking action. Local wineries have installed megawatt solar systems on their property, and they're using batteries to store the solar energy those systems produce to maximize energy usage efficiency and help stabilize the local electrical grid. Baja Carports in the Martinez part of our district, they are building carports that incorporate solar panels on their roofs. Sonoma County wine growers have committed to becoming the nation's first 100% sustainable wine region. The County of Sonoma created a community-wide climate action plan to build on work already done to reduce emissions. This plan has an ambitious goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by more than 70% of current levels by 2050. The plan includes strategies to increase energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy and to promote more sustainable agriculture. Again, this is ambitious, but as I said, we can't cede aspiration to apathy. All of you here today are an important part of our collective effort. You're standing up and you're speaking out. So keep it going. It's really important. I'll be with you, shoulder to shoulder, all the way. And together, we'll reach our ambitious goals and ensure that we have a planet to pass on to our next generation. Thank you very much.
Mara Ventura is the Executive Director of North Bay Jobs with Justice, which has brought good jobs to workers in the region since 2000. Daisy Pistey-Lyhne is the Executive Director of Sonoma County Conservation Action, a West County native and a lifelong fighter for Mother Earth. Jose Hernandez Ayala is the Director of the Climate Research Center at Sonoma State and a native of Puerto Rico. Wigg is the founder of the Farmers Guild, bringing together the next generation of farmers across California, and a director of Community Alliance with Family Farmers. Give it up for our panelists.
All right, so again, thank you everyone for being here, and so much energy, so many people really fighting for the things that for me the two most important issues of our time, which are climate change and economic injustice. Right, so again, my name is Jose Javier. You can call me Javi. I'm an assistant professor and director of the Climate Research Center at Sonoma State University. And today I'm really gonna talk about, okay, it works, awesome. Right, so I think the great presentation by the Young Women in Sunrise Movement really talked about all of the major points, but I really want to talk a little bit more about the science behind it, behind climate change, the science behind our understanding on the causes of climate change. We do understand really well, the physical processes that are driving climate change. We understand carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases are accumulating in the atmosphere because of our dependence on fossil fuels, right? But the kind of the social processes, right? The economic processes, the political, right? Actors behind those, let's say, very high accumulations of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are really not necessarily, as explored or as visible, in the media as we do see in terms of visible actors, right? And here I have some quotes on, some researchers that have explored this topic a lot. And the thing is that we don't see a lot of this because a lot of people benefit from the current economic system, the way it's set up, right? And I think the people here that we're talking about, the big fossil fuel corporations that benefit, fund our politicians, are the ones, responsible for many of the misunderstanding of many of the things that we do have, a good understanding in terms of science, but they're trying to create this idea that there's, two sides to the issue when there's really just one, side. And the side is that the science is telling us that the planet is warming and that we have to take action and that we do have some solutions. So I know that many of you are familiar with this graph over here, right? So as a scientist, we need to separate what is climate change from normal climate variability of the planet. So this is CO2, carbon dioxide, over the last 400,000 years. And if you see that, the current level over there, that's our current, I think recently we surpassed the 415 parts per million in the atmosphere, CO2 just recently, right? So this is even higher than this. And we do see some normal fluctuations associated with the Earth's natural cycles, the Earth's orbit and all that. But the recent warming that we're seeing in the planet that is driving all of these different changes in sea level rise, more frequent, more destructive wildfires, more intense hurricanes, is really something that is human-induced, right? And I think we can go to over here, so I'm trying to. And I think here, the young ladies and the young women here in the Sunrise, they talk about how this Carbon Majors report says that since 1988, around 70% of our emissions can be directly connected to just 100 publicly owned and privately owned fossil fuel corporations, right? And here you can get the list of who is, number one is China Coal, but then you have a bunch of other private and also public actors in the fossil fuel industry. So this is where we need to really tackle, and have strategies on how, because as individuals, we can do a lot of different things in order to address climate change, but we also need to get together, organize and fight these people who are actually, responsible for most of the emissions. So I think we can move to the next one. So a Green New Deal. So I think our challenge here is how can we make a Green New Deal that we talk about it at the federal level, the national level, how we can make it a local, right, Green New Deal, how we can organize around the issues of our area, housing crisis, wildfires, cost of living, jobs guaranteed. So we can take all of those, very big ideas, big strategies, organizing how to bring them into kind of the local. So here we have a lot of those different things that we've been talking about already. The Sunrise Movement have been mentioning, universal health care, housing for all, guaranteed jobs. But kind of what we want to discuss today is how can we make those things happen at the local level, right? So I only have like 2 minutes left. So here again, one of the major things, right here in Sonoma County, our biggest source, right, of emissions is the transportation sector. Also energy production sector is the big one in California and the rest of the nation. So transforming our energy and transportation infrastructure should be a priority. And I think we're moving in the right direction, but we need, again, a more democratic control. So again, those of us here who know about the issue of PG&E, right? We should really start discussing how we should manage, not only energy production, but also energy transmission, distribution. Should we allow a private actor to control, our energy sources, or should we organize and develop a community-owned, operated energy grid, right? So that's what we want, right? And I'm trying to move really quick here. So one thing that we haven't discussed a lot here is the role of public banking in all of this, right? And this is something that at the national level, you can look at the map right here. There's been, I think right now, North Dakota is the only state with, a public bank, but there are states that are moving, have legislation, have organizations that are fighting for this. And I think it's a good way, when we think about the Green New Deal, local Green New Deal, a good way to think about how do we fund all of this if we put all of our money, all of our taxes, local taxes, into a public bank, without the middleman from Wall Street that have their own, like profit-driven mentality and their own individual interests, if we put all of those resources in the hands of people who actually care about our environment, I think we can do a lot more, invest in quality, like infrastructure, restoration of ecosystems, good paying jobs, affordable housing, all those issues. And I think public banking can play a massive, big role in all of this. So I'm going to finish here, and I have some questions that I want you guys to think about. So this is a kind of a cartoon that showed up before the Copenhagen talks, right? And you have, and this is, I deal with this every day as an academic, as a scientist, energy independence, reserve rainforest, sustainability, green jobs, livable cities, renewables, clean water, healthy children, and then we have some people still saying, what if it's a big hoax and we create a better world for nothing, right? So this is the people that we need to fight, and the people that we need to tell, we want to create a better world in order to address these two big issues, and we need to show them, right, that we have, the understanding, the technology, the knowledge to get there. So last slide, I know I have a lot of energy, I'm trying to go quick, but a couple of questions here and that I want you guys to think about. How can we make a Green New Deal work locally if we don't have the support of the state or the federal government? Because sometimes we might be really progressive over here, really well in terms of organizing locally, but the people who control the federal government might have other ideas, right? And the people who control the state government might have other ideas. So that is something to think about. And also, what should be priorities in terms of all of those different measures, all of those different policy ideas when it comes to the Green New Deals? What should be the things that we should do first in terms of starting to move in the right direction? So that's the end of my talk. If anyone has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those. Thank you.
So, first off, thank you all for coming out on a rainy evening to be here. I'm really just inspired by seeing so many faces here in the audience today. So, my name is Wigg. I'm with the Community Alliance of Family Farmers and the Farmers Guild. We represent, thank you, we represent sustainable agriculture and family farms all over California. And what I want to talk about today is the historical precedent here. It's not a coincidence. This is being modeled after previous legislation and previous movement. You all know of the New Deal, the original New Deal. And one thing that I don't think is really being highlighted is that there's more than just the fact that it's a large wholesale set of reforms, but the New Deal was a response to one of the first major ecological disasters in our nation's history, which was the Dust Bowl. We had an American government and an economic system that encouraged farmers to move west and farm with unsustainable practices, to grow, to produce without a lot of forethought, and the consequence was we lost 1/6 of our topsoil. Entire livelihoods, entire towns, entire economies were totally destroyed, and the reason why we needed so many jobs created by the New Deal wasn't just the crash of 1929, it was because of unsustainable management of our natural resources and the soil on which our entire civilization depends. And we're in a situation now where we're doing similar things. We are in a case where the crisis is even larger, but we're continuing to destroy topsoil. Our farming practices, in a lot of ways, in conventional agriculture, we're creating dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico. We're also dealing with climate catastrophe here in Sonoma County through climate change producing the massive, which really what it is global weirding, right? It's not just global warming, because we have the floods, we have the hurricanes, and as of right now, not only are we bailing out farmers because of disastrous trade deals at our federal level, but we're also bailing out farmers because of ecological disasters and floods and hurricanes and fires. Here in Sonoma County, we had a number of farmers who lost their homes, lost their barns to disasters. One story that it's always stuck with me. There's a farmer out in the Sonoma Valley, grows about 14 acres of diversified organic fruits and vegetables and flowers. And he lost not only his house, his barn, but for 20 years he'd been saving seeds to adapt to that particular climate, to that soil. And there's a lot of things that could be replaced, but some of those things can't. And so we're staring climate change in the face right now. And farmers, despite what some people say, despite what some conservative pundits might say about the perspectives of farmers, we see climate change. We're actually the first people who see climate change. We see it in the changing of our crops in the planting season. We see it in the way that the soil reacts to these seasons, to the dissipation of the fog in the Central Valley. Things are changing radically, and we need to adapt. But another thing I want to talk about is that a lot of times agriculture has talked about the problem of climate change, that farmers are contributing to ecological disasters, but there's also an incredible opportunity for farmers to play a role in the fight against climate change. There's a lot of talk about MIT, these expert scientists building massive machines that are going to suck the carbon. They're spending millions and millions and millions of dollars building these machines that are going to suck the carbon out of the atmosphere and turn it into energy or something like that. And I'm no mechanic myself, but I do know we already have a vast carbon sink. And it's our soil, it's our farms, it's our working lands. Here in Sonoma County, we have a number of people practicing sustainable agriculture. We'll be at our organization called Climate Smart Agriculture. And California is the very first state to take a step in being a leader in recognizing climate change solutions from agriculture and incentivizing farmers to make those transitions. We're talking about using cover crops, we're talking about compost, crop rotations, holistically managed grazing. There's a whole suite of practices, some that are new, but most of which have been practicing for thousands of years in arid climates and places where we all know that preserving that few inches of topsoil that keeps us alive as a civilization is absolutely imperative. Well, we have farmers doing that, but we now have Healthy Soils Initiative here in California. We have sweet programs. We have a number of programs just in the past couple of years that we've been able to pass where we provide financial incentives to support farmers in making that transition. And most farmers want to do the right thing, but it has to be economically feasible for them. They have to have the technical assistance, the education, and it's out there, it's available. We don't have to invent any new big machines to make it happen. It's available. And with my last 30 seconds, thank you. Let's skip a couple of slides here. Farms are suffering right now, right? The number of farms continues to decline. We have consolidation in the industry. The entire food industry is being eaten up by monopolies, and farmers do not have it easy. To expect that farmers should just simply turn on a dime and start creating regeneratively grown produce and just overnight, it's pretty unrealistic. They need our support. And I'm going to go skip that one. We have these solutions, but one thing I really want to leave you with is that in order for them to do this, they need the economic support, not just of our government, but also of our consumers. And regeneratively grown produce should not be a privilege, right? And the only way that regeneratively produced food can be accessible to all people, not just privileged people, is if everyone has a job that pays well. So the connection, it can't just be piecemeal. It can't just be, well, we'll take care of some climate smart agriculture provisions over here, and then we'll deal with labor over here, and then we'll deal with working lands over here. It has to be in tandem. And so I'm excited to be on this panel right now because we're going to be talking about those connections. And I believe the next one is exactly that. So thank you so much.
Okay. Hi. Cool. My name's Mara Ventura. I'm the Executive Director of North Bay Jobs with Justice. We are a local workers' rights coalition made up of over 20 organizations here in the Bay Area that are community, faith, labor, and student most recently, which has been really exciting. I want to talk a little bit today about what I think is probably arguably one of the parts of the Green New Deal that's the hardest to understand and probably has the least amount of public education, and that's the piece around labor and workers. And before I get into that, what I want to set us up as like a framework today is a just transition. And hopefully this is not a new term, at least for this audience, but just in case it is, I wanted to share some of the principles of a just transition. A just transition, it's a framework that was actually created by not just environmentalists, but trade unions and workers who really felt like it was important to have a framework in terms of talking about the economy and switching to an economy that is regenerative rather than extractive, that not only minimizes the hardships that workers face and their families and communities, but also moves us to being more climate action and climate resilient. So the first one is sound investments in low emission and job-rich sectors and technologies, and this is probably one of the main parts of the Green New Deal. And a lot of what folks are talking about today. But we're also talking about strong and democratic communication between trade workers and the community, moving from an economy where it's top down, where these corporations that folks today have already started talking about are making the decisions, and our economy is based on wealth and power, and moving into an economy where we're talking about deep democracy, where our workers, and not just all the workers, I mean, yes, all workers, but also communities that are most impacted. One of the students today, probably one of you all, but one of the young folks today talked about the fact that when we're talking about environmental destruction, we're talking about the communities impacted. Most vulnerable and most impacted communities are communities of color, they're immigrants, they're women's, they're indigenous communities. And so this has to be the same framework when we're talking about labor. We have to also think about how switching to a regenerative economy and building infrastructure is also centering and prioritizing those communities through their labor. And that depends on deep democracy, depends on deep communication between those communities and what they need and what we're building. Research on the social and employment impacts of climate policies, and I will just do a shameless plug that Jobs of Justice has done a great report on apprenticeship labor and the pathway for women in communities of color. But having that research is important just as much as having the research on climate change. Training and skills development, which are key to support the deployment of new technologies and foster industrial change. And I'm going to talk a minute today about how our pre-apprenticeships and our apprenticeship programs here in Sonoma County in the Bay Area are using the cutting edge green technology for training and for building infrastructure. And then of course the respect of human and labor rights. So hopefully some of you guys have heard of Movement Generations, this wonderful organization that's put out a whole booklet and a zine really on just transition. We have it at our table over there, but one of the things they say that is great, which is that an investment that destroys our earth is not really an investment. So our investments have to make sure that we're bringing up people, and we're also bringing up our buildings into being more biodiverse. So where are we at? Where is the current state of labor? So we know that there's been attacks on labor from the right wing since the peak of the 1950s. Any movement, we've known that when we come together and we build power, it's a threat to those who have it. But specifically under Trump's regime, we've had rollbacks from some of the gains that we got during the Obama era. We've specifically seen a lot of attacks on workers' rights to organize, and specifically, especially on government workers, where they have some of the most ability to hit that right away. But also, we've seen Supreme Court folks instated that have attacked unions' democratic ability to decide how they pull their resources together, which is really a direct impact on unions and workers' ability to have political power, because that's where their power came from, is being able to pull resources together and run their own candidates and put into elected officials positions champions for workers and for our community. And then, of course, I also just want to mention that it's not just about attacks on workers. Attacks on workers is not just about taking away rights or making it harder for them to have their rights. But I also think an attack on workers also means complacency and about erasing some of the standards that they've put into place out out of some of our current policies. So I will give a quick example. Here in Sonoma County, it's rare that we have our commercial buildings or have our developments and affordable housing, it's shorter, built with local skilled and trained workers, built with prevailing wages intacted. We have rampant wage theft happening, the exploitation of undocumented workers happening. And can you go to the next slide, thanks. So there's some real local opportunities, and if our local elected officials are not holding developers and contractors locally accountable for not just building soundly and building green, but ensuring, for example, that the workers who are building affordable housing units are getting paid wages so that they can actually apply for those units. So if we are rebuilding after the Tubbs fire on the backs of low-wage workers, on the backs of exploited, undocumented workers, then we're not building in a sound way, and we're failing our community, and we're going to squeeze some of the most important people in this community out. So I think one of the most important things we can do, and we need to start doing, what we should have been doing, is paving a real pathway for pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship workers here. We have them. It's one of the biggest questions people ask me is, do we even have apprenticeship workers? Yes, we do. It's one of the most important roads to the middle class. And I will also say we put out a report recently that showed that construction workers are among the top 5 industries that we're losing workers. Construction workers are leaving. Well over 60 or 70% of our local trained and skilled construction workers are going to the East Bay to work because we're not passing project labor agreements. Our elected officials are not ensuring that contractors and developers are building in ways that protect workers and use the most highly trained workers we have, which are the folks coming in through pre-apprenticeships. And our building trades and our Labor Council and Jobs with Justice are doing a lot right now to ensure there's higher recruitment and retention of women. They're creating cohorts in the pre-apprenticeship program that are all in Spanish so that there's more access for undocumented workers to have a pathway to sound wages and health benefits and workman's comp and a union. And the only way that we're actually going to ensure that our buildings are built in a way that takes care of workers is that we're passing project labor agreements and that we're using our pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship workers, because it's an absolute shame that we cannot recruit young people and folks of color and enough women into our pre-apprenticeship programs because there's no guaranteed jobs for them. And that all comes down to our elected officials. I'm out of time, so on the last slide, just a couple of questions that I just want to pose for folks, for us to think about. How are we building in a way that's thoughtful of the factors that are causing climate change? How is what we're building sustainable for generations to come? How are the people that are building able to care for their families? And how is our building enriching our community by reusing organic resources, eliminating harmful root causes of climate change, educating the public, and moving us from a profit model to a community model and taking care of each other? So thanks so much. Head to our table for more information on how you can support the pre-apprenticeship program and what it is. It's free. The apprenticeship programs are free. Our table's over there.
Hey, y'all are familiar with Sonoma County Conservation Action, right? And when you think about the environmental components of climate change, probably you're thinking about the 1 million species that the UN just reported last week are going to be dying off and going extinct in the next 5-10 years. You're probably thinking about the loss of wetlands and rivers and forests. And those are all extremely important problems that globally we need to take care of as we solve climate change. And we know that natural solutions, planting trees, which take carbon out of the air. As Evan said, we have soil that takes carbon out of the air. We don't need technology, we just need to restore the natural systems that we already had in place that kept carbon where it was. But because Sonoma County has done so much good work protecting open space and preserving our farmlands and protecting the lands outside our cities, tonight I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what we can do inside our cities to combat climate change. Because we, humans here, predominantly live in cities. We live in homes, we drive cars, we get around on roads, and our impact on the planet is caused by all of those components. And so I just wanted to really quickly break it down. Global emissions, if you look at them here, we have US emissions have continued to creep upward, but they are kind of stabilizing compared to like China and the developing world. So we know that there are some people who say, the US shouldn't take action because all these developing countries are the big problem. But we know that's not true because in the United States, all of us, globally were about 20% of global emissions for a long time. Just the US alone. You can look. All of the emissions, just the US. And we're only like 387 million people, right? China is 3 times that size. So each of us, our carbon footprint is way larger than any individual in other countries because of the way we live. If you can go to the next slide. In US global emissions, we see that a large chunk of it, most of it comes from gasoline and fossil fuels. And then if you look at the slide on the left, you can see that the blue is building an energy emission. So we are dealing with getting more renewable energy on the grid, reducing our emissions from energy use. What we're continuing to see not go down is the red, which is our transportation, right? We love our cars in America, right? We think, I need a car, that's freedom. When I turn 16, yes, I'm getting out there. And we don't really stop thinking that way. But we need to stop thinking that way for the future of our planet. So, next slide. Here in Sonoma County, we have this great Regional Climate Protection Agency, which is at a table back here in the corner. And I'm going to send you guys there later. And they've done some great analysis of what it is that we release into the air in our emissions. And they calculate it and analyze it. And we took this bold step about a decade ago as a county to say we would reduce our emissions by like 30% by 2030, I think it is, and then more by 2050. I have it on the next slide. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is that we're not actually reducing our emissions, despite our best efforts. Because if you look at, the blue portion of the circle, we have our emissions from transportation going up. We went from 53% of our emissions to 59% of our emissions just in transportation because we're reducing energy emissions, we're reducing building emissions by getting more efficient, but our transportation system continues to be to thwart us here in this county because we're such a rural and suburban place. So what can we do? That's the question. Public transit, hey, good. Okay, next question. So our target to reduce GHG is 40% below 1990 levels by 2030 and 80% below 1990 levels by 2050, but we're not doing it. Wrong direction. Okay, are electric cars the solution? Maybe, yeah. So many of us live in rural areas and we can't get around without a car. So the Sonoma Clean Power has done a great job of incentivizing electric cars, getting electric car chargers out there. It's wonderful because if you're stuck out living in a rural area, how else are you going to get around? But getting us into a bunch of electric cars doesn't take care of the problem of traffic, and that's a huge increasing problem in Sonoma County too, right? We've all been stuck on 101 during rush hour, I'm sure. And the more electric cars we have, the more lifts we have, whatever. It doesn't solve the problem. So we need better public transit. We need walking and biking paths. We need train, which we got. We got the SMART train in 2000, or whatever, 2008. And we've gotten 1.1 million people off the road this year on the SMART train. Did you guys know that? Amazing. But we need more people riding it, and we need more people getting onto it using electric scooters, riding their bikes, getting connected. Okay, next slide. But the problem is that we have these bad land use patterns here in Sonoma County. We managed to put urban growth boundaries into place, which stopped us from sprawling outward, but what we've done inside those urban growth boundaries is continue to build single-family home developments and not put good transit into place. So what we need to do is we need more transit-oriented smart growth, and that means as much as we're afraid of building up, we need to build up. We have a panel of people all under the age of 40. I don't think any of us own homes. We want to live here. We want to be part of the community, and we need homes for us to be able to stay here. But in order to do that, we're going to need to become your neighbors. You might already live in a city. You might not want neighbors, maybe. You might already have neighbors. But when you create more neighbors, what you do is you take away the need to drive. By having more people, you create the opportunity for transit, the opportunity for walking, and the opportunity for biking, and it's counterintuitive, but it's very true. So I really just want to say,
That the more we can support development in our city centers, in our neighborhoods, and not pushing outward, not building more single-family homes that we already have enough of in this community. We have an aging population that's going to want to move out of big single-family homes into smaller units, and there's no smaller units to move into. There's younger people who aren't having families as early who want smaller units, and there are no smaller units. So we need a diversity of housing types as much as we need a diversity of economy and a diversity of everything. Like, diversity makes us more stronger, basically. So please support more denser housing in your communities. And then my time is up, so really quickly, on energy, we have, like I said, we have Sonoma Clean Power. How many of you have gone solar? Woo! Awesome, so many of you. So we're doing a good job on clean energy, but we need to do better. We have 15,000 people, I think, have subscribed to Sonoma Clean Power. They have a 1% subscription rate to their 100% clean energy product, Evergreen, which is pretty low. So the more you can talk to your friends and neighbors about going clean energy, paying the full cost of energy, because right now we have oil, gas, and coal being subsidized, and clean energy not being subsidized. So as we move to clean energy, even though the prices are dropping, it still can sometimes cost a little bit more, but heck, it is worth it to save the world from climate change, right? And what we need to do as part of the Green New Deal is obviously create good jobs, because this is a great opportunity to transition our workers out of fossil fuel industry into good, well-paid jobs, building the infrastructure we need to make this transition. So I think that is the end. But we have one last thing, which is, next slide. Here at the Sonoma County Regional Climate Protection Agency over in the corner, you guys can go and get involved in this exciting 6-month challenge going on right now in Sonoma County, the Sonoma County Climate Challenge. They are trying to get 500 homes to reduce 500 tons of carbon. And there's all sorts of different ways you can do it, through transportation, energy use, cleanup, I can't read what it says, water, all sorts of things. You can probably read it, I can't. But if you guys sign up with our CPA, we have Carrie over there and Nicole at this table, and they would love to get you guys signed up for it so you can get all sorts of good ideas about how to reduce your personal footprint. But the last thing I will leave with you is that action can take place at many levels. We have level 1, personal responsibility, and that's what you can do right now. Level 2 is impacting your neighborhood and institutions that you're part of. So as some of the younger ladies said earlier, please go talk to your neighbors, talk to your churches, talk to your PTAs, talk about the need to make this transition together. Level 3, we can take action in our cities, which is what we're about to do. We're going to have Sunny talk to you about getting together with your neighbors to talk about action. And then level 4 is getting state and federal level elected officials on board, which we're lucky to have here in Sonoma County. But one last reminder, we're going into an election year, as CCA does elections. And if you can talk to your people in other parts of the country, we have amazing organizations like Swing Left that's taking people in blue districts and sending them to red districts to get people elected, and they are getting them elected. We've gotten Democrats elected in red districts. It's amazing. We took back the House because of this. And we are not going to get a Green New Deal unless we take back the Senate and the White House. So, as much as we want you at SCCA to get engaged in your local elections and make sure we have good environmental champions at the table in our cities and counties, we also want you to ensure that your friends and neighbors and the people you don't even know that you can write postcards to around the country are going to hear from you, because we need the Green New Deal. You're all here giving up a Wednesday, or putting to great use a Wednesday night in order to hear about it and to learn about it. Now take it and put it into action. Thank you all.